So tonight is the second chapter in Hear Tell, a spotlight on Pathfinders. The first chapter was on Memorial Day when I interviewed Dr. Aminata Cairo. Today we'll be joined by someone I feel so privileged to introduce to you, or you may already know her, and that is Judy Rodman. Let me remind you before I introduce Judy that if you're watching and you'd like us to know you're here, please leave a comment or a like. Okay, Judy Rodman. She's been making music for over 50 years. When you see her, you'll wonder how that's possible because she looks so young. But she knows every aspect of that business. She's an award-winning vocal coach, a recording artist, a stage and television producer. She's a public speaker and an author and a multi-genre hit songwriter. She's a studio producer and a vocal consultant. Impressive, huh? So she's worked also as a background vocalist. I found this so interesting. She's also done arrangements, the backup vocals, and also other contracting work for hundreds of master albums, live shows, and TV for artists that you know, including Tammy Wynette, Elvis Presley, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, Ray Charles. The list is long. She's toured with the Oak Ridge Boys, Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Loretta Lynn, and many others. Judy was named the best vocal coach in 2011 by the Nashville Music Pros. She formulated and teaches her own trademarked vocal training method. She calls it Power, Path, and Performance. And she's teaching that to both singers and speakers nationally and internationally. Judy recently surpassed the 2 million reader mark for her blog, All Things Vocal. Talk about knowing how to be heard. And her podcast, which was launched in 2010, now has almost 200,000 plays on its own. She's averaging 1,000 people per episode. It's in that capacity that she's here with us today. She's not going to be singing for us, unfortunately, but it is such an honor to introduce Judy Rodman. Let me bring her on, y'all.
Woohoo!
Judy.
Thank you, Mariah. Thank you for that kind introduction. Yes, you know, when I look at your bio, I know that I'm in good company. I'm in the company of someone who understands all these hats that we wear through decades of plying our trades and learning a couple of things along the way. Yeah.
There's no better way to learn than by doing and having to figure it out. And I'll bet you've done plenty of that. And I have done plenty of that too. You're right. So maybe we have found a sympathetic soul in each other. I'm so glad to have met you and that you had the time to come. I know you've had a very busy day and another one tomorrow. So before we get started, is there anything you just wanted to say right at the beginning before we dive into some questions?
No, just thank you for mentioning the blog and podcast. I really like being able to get out to people that are not necessarily in my own pond. And I think that what you're doing with Hear Tell Spotlight on Pathfinders, you're doing that. You're getting voices that you want, whose messages, you know, resonate with you. You're magnifying them out where they're getting in new ponds and stuff. And so I really appreciate that, not only for me, but for everyone else you'll have on.
Thank you so much. I'm having such a grand and glorious time doing this, even though I've just started. Okay, so I'm going to really just plow into some prepared questions. Since I wanted to give this some thought and ask you some questions that are, you know, get to the core of some of who you are and some of the things that I think will be valuable for our listeners too. So you wrote a blog post and recorded it for your, I think it was for both your podcast and your blog, in November 2020. Mm-hmm. And this post really captured my attention. You already know what it is I'm doing here, and I'm trying to encourage people to use their voices and to use their words and their platform for good and to become skillful at doing that. So, of course, I was drawn to this particular piece that you called Responsibilities of Successful Voices. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. To give our listeners just a little context, I want to read a short quote from that episode. Here we go. The voice can be very, very powerful. It can heal, destroy, inspire, shut down, mislead, correct, change one mind, or redirect the trajectory of the whole world in tremendous ways, for better or worse. It's a slippery slope to unintended harm when we don't realize what is really driving us and our messages. If we want to be on the side of the angels, our voice's core why needs to be consciously and intentionally about far more than money, fame, or power. I love that so much. So obviously you spent a lifetime exploring your voice, as well as coaching singers, speakers, and actors to strengthen or improve their voices in some way. Many of your blog posts are on your podcast, All Things Vocal, are on those kinds of subjects, such as vocal technique and other related topics. So what led you to write on that particular day or any day about the responsibilities of successful voices?
Well, mostly because I believe in the power of the voice. I believe in the power of the voice, and I don't think people realize their own power, and they don't use it. They don't use it. They just sometimes just rant, or they, just sort of say what they need to say to make themselves feel better. We all do that, and all that. But sometimes we should do that, or we should journal and then burn it, because the voice is a two-sided thing. It's an interactive sport when you're speaking or singing to someone. And successful voices are, by definition, getting listened to. Therefore, they have responsibilities, and too many people don't think about that. And so at the time I wrote this, there was so much incredibly angry talk and even songs being written. And I just wanted people to think, if you're an influencer, then you've got to, it's more powerful than a gun, that thing that you've got coming out of your face, which is your voice. And you need to realize that you have a responsibility for what? For the response to what you're saying or singing. Because that's the aim of the voice. The voice exists to deliver messages. And if you're going to deliver messages, it's about getting a response to those messages. So what response are you looking for? And I wrote this post. I rewrote it a few times, and I was scared to write it. I almost wrote it and just decided I just needed to vent, But then I'm thinking to myself, okay, who am I talking to? How do I want them to respond? Do I want them to just realize I'm angry with them? Or do I want them to think? And that's what I want. I want them to think. That makes my voice valuable. If I'm just griping or telling somebody how stupid they are, or, if they disagree with me or not listening to their voice, along with giving them my messages. So the voice becomes valueless, or even worse, harmful.